Cisco Secure Firewall Demo, SecOps Use Cases. This session is going to focus on some of the common use cases of the security operator, but will also include differentiating capabilities that only Cisco Secure Firewall provides. Let's get started. All right, we're in the dashboard. Very quickly, we can get a clear view of the threat landscape for our organization. We get to see indicators of compromise by user and host. We can drill into them. Let's pivot over to unified events. Now, this is where we unify all events, whether it's a connection event, an intrusion event, or a malware event. Now, we can see a couple of examples here. We've got an intrusion monitor event that's security related. We have also encrypted visibility indicator of compromise. This is leveraging our encrypted visibility engine. Now, we can very quickly pivot to a focused viewpoint of what we're looking for. So if we're looking at malware, we use control, click on the malware icon, bam, it filters that all out. We can drill into those specific areas of interest, and we can see the source, the destination, the country, maybe the source user if it's available, the SHA-256, the threat score, the file type, the URL if there's association there, and we can see client application tagged with encrypted visibility engine. Really cool and easy for us to navigate the platform to determine what might be going on. Now, as fast as I did malware, I can go ahead and look at intrusions as well. Control and click that icon, and bam, there's all my intrusions. Again, filtered, allowing me to go quickly and look at exactly the areas of interest and pivot and get good, clear understanding what might be happening, including the SNORT rule that was triggered. Now, I can even go a little bit deeper here, and I can focus my view for specific areas like intrusions. And I've done that here, and I can see all of the intrusions that platform has seen, and I can pivot into each and every one of these as needed. So let's do that. Let's pivot into one of these, and let's check some of the data points that are available. So we can see it's an impact score of 1. Cisco understands the environment in which it's protecting, the host, the operating system, the applications, the potential ports available, and maybe even associated vulnerabilities. It aligns to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and we can give you clear indication of what impact that particular event had triggered, and allows you to focus in areas that put the organization at the most risk. Now, I can also pivot into the host itself. Because we have the ability to discover all of the assets in the organization, we can build a host profile. And now that we have a host profile, we can determine whether or not an intrusion event is related to that specific host and the level of impact that's associated with that particular intrusion event. Now, a great example of this is if I have a Linux asset and the attack is for a Windows-based system, well, every IPS will trigger an alert, but that alert is never realized because that system itself is a Linux-based system and not prone to the Windows attack. So therefore, you can see how the platform can really optimize my understanding of the environment and the risk levels associated to it. Now let's drill into the host profile itself. We can see the IP address, the NetBIOS name, the host type, last seen, and we can see the indicators of compromise. Very quickly, I can see there's a CNC connected. That was an intrusion event. We see a suspicious activity with the encrypted visibility engine, and we see another CNC connected event using security intelligence. Now I can look at the first scene and last scene of each event and very quickly pivot to them. I can also see the host operating system for which Cisco Secure Firewall has determined. I can see the services that are running on the asset. I can see user history, or many users may have logged into the system, the host protocols, and any vulnerabilities that we believe passively might be exposed on that particular asset. You can tie this into a third-party vulnerability scanner and get real-time data. Either or, we're providing you richer insight into what might be happening on that particular host to allow you to make decisions sooner. Let's close that off. All right, let's go to packets. Now, the first thing that we see here is the event information, all the details, the priority, the ingress and egress security zones, the ingress and egress interfaces, the IPs. I can actually pivot into those IPs, do a who is. I can look at the host profile if one's available, And I can also pivot into third-party sources, including our very own Cisco Talos, and look at that IP and get an understanding of the initial disposition that Cisco has determined of that specific IP. We can all look at the rules and understand the rule, and we can actually create our own. We can also take action from here as well. We can set thresholds and set suppressions. But here's a really important piece. Cisco by default captures the packet for an intrusion event. Now, this is very important because the box is already sized with that in mind. But more importantly, this means that even if an event only happens once, we have the packet capture of that event. And you can view it within the browser, or you can pivot to your favorite tool like Wireshark and quickly analyze the packet for that specific event. It's never lost, even for those one-time attacks. Now let's go into intrusion policy itself. Let's go to SNORT version 3. Now, what's beautiful here is it walks you through how to build your policies from base layer to group overrides, recommendations, to rule overrides. Now, we're not going to get specific on each one of those elements. You can certainly dig into this. But what's unique here is that Cisco's ability to leverage, first of all, SNORT version 3, which is open source, but also allows us to provide what we call our rule recommendations, or firepower recommends. And you can see here, we can see the number that triggers alerts, the block, the disabled rules, overridden, and any new recommendations that might be provided. And you can scan and scour that. Now, the beautiful thing here is that we understand the environment in which we're protecting. And therefore, because we understand, we can make recommendations of what your policy for intrusion should look like. And you can schedule this, you can automate this as well. But the bottom line is that now I have an ability to stay current based on what my environment looks like. As it changes, I can run this rule recommendation at any point, again, either manual or automated, to provide the best prescriptive-based intrusion policy possible to protect my environment. Really neat stuff. Now let's go over to malware and file policy. Now we have one here. Let's go ahead and edit that. And so we've got a rule that's already been created. And again, I'm going to keep this simple. We can do it based on application protocol, the direction of transfer. We can be very granular. We can do it based on executables or a specific file. We can block. We can do a cloud lookup. And now we have some other optimizations like Spiro analysis, dynamic analysis, or sandboxing. We have local malware analysis. We can reset connections. We have capacity handling, and we can store the files. So if you want to pull the file later, then you'll have the ability to do that. We can do it based on malware, unknown, clean, and custom. Typically, if you're looking at malware, you want two types, malware and unknown. All right, let's get out of here. And we can very quickly see what policy this specific malware policy, in this case, or file policy, is associated to which rules. All right, let's go to analysis. And let's go to malware events. Now that we're in malware events, we picked one of those samples and we're going to pivot into it. We call this network file trajectory. Now, this is another differentiator. We have the ability to come in and have a quick look at that malware sample from the perspective of the network. We can see relationships between the file and other assets in the organization or the asset from which we pulled it from. But we also can integrate this with our endpoint product to allow us to very quickly determine whether or not the file may have been passed through Cisco Secure Firewall, the disposition was unknown, and then later a retrospective event, so we go back in time, has been determined that the file was in fact bad based on new intelligence or sandboxing, and the endpoint may have quarantined it. Really cool stuff, because now you're looking at the product not only blocking net new, but actually working with the endpoint to ensure that that file has been removed from the environment the moment we know the disposition. So we can download the file, we can look at the current disposition, we can also look at the dynamic analysis. So this is with Cisco Secure Malware Analytics platform. That's part of it. You can view the report. You can come in and look at all the analysis. And if you have access to our malware analytics platform, you can actually resubmit, interact with the malware to give the analyst better insight into what might be happening. Now, there's some unique capabilities within the malware analytics platform. First and foremost is that it's an outside looking in sandbox. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is that there's nothing in the virtual execution space to allow malware writers to know that they're being monitored. So we do really crafty things like abstracting the virtual drivers. We also do things like dynamically introduce data into the environment, like letterheads and browsing history, and even have mouse movement. There's playbooks and a lot of other stuff that comes with it, but allows Cisco to execute malware in a safe environment. Now we can pivot into here and we can see the relationships between the IP, the blocked recipient, the user, the file name, the disposition, the action, the application protocol, the client, and web application. And like I said, if we quarantined it, because the Cisco Secure Endpoint had been installed, we would actually see that here as well. Now, as I scroll down, you can see the events, and I can see all of the events that have taken place, the usernames, the file name, the disposition, all the details that any analyst would want at their fingertips. All right, let's go ahead and jump into modules. So one of the things that you may not be aware of, you can install remediation modules within the firewall. You don't need to jump necessarily to an XDR or have some orchestration or automation. You can do this within the platform itself. So we've got a few built-in modules we can integrate with Identity Services Engine as well to take a network-centric action against a particular risk. But what we're going to do here is we're going to use the Nmap, built-in Nmap module. And what we're going to do is create this module. This is going to be for the PCI environment. And we're going to go ahead and configure the details here. There's not a lot I'm going to change here, but you can go through and review it. And I can go through and set up the specifics for this particular remediation capability that I'm trying to deliver on. Now I save this out. Didn't change any of the defaults as mentioned. And now that I have this available, I can go ahead and save. And then let's go ahead and jump into policies and correlation. Now this again uniquely positions Cisco. We have correlation policies. These allow us to use multiple different attributes to determine whether something might be nefarious in the organization or something that we want to pay attention to. And we can build traffic profiles, rule management, and deliver a policy that's wrapped around it. That's a little bit more advanced than an access control list. So look at this. As a PCI environment, we're going to say anything within the PCI environment that is not connecting to the United States. Let's go ahead and grab that. And so that's a condition. Let's add a complex condition here. Now we'll say and. So if we see something that is not the United States or a destination country of the United States, and the initiator IP is 10.10.10.100. Let's assume these are some critical systems. And web application category is remote administration. Now that we've got this traffic profile, we can enable it. And so now this traffic profile is going to profile the environment over time, and we can look for deviations within that profile. Let's go ahead and create a rule. Now this rule here was going to be PCI change. We're going to say here, if the traffic profile changes, we're going to add a condition here. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say if the total bytes is greater than 1 from the standard deviation, or the total number of packets is greater than 1, then we might want to do something. Meaning it's coming from that 10.10.10.100 address, or it's a remote administration capability and the destination is outside of the United States. I want to take action. And what is that action? Well, that action's going to be do an nmap scan. Now, you might want to take an isolation action against it, but you get the idea. Now I'm going to scan the system. Why? I'm scanning the system to see if there's open ports available that shouldn't be available on that particular asset that all of a sudden now is being leveraged for nefarious reasons. The next thing we can do is very quickly go to correlation events. I don't have any here, but this is where you would see any of those rules that we had created being triggered here. All right, let's jump over to Context Explorer. Now, this is a very quick way of getting a good lay of the land. I can see everything here. I can see intrusions. I can see indicators of compromise over time, the impact. I can look at the network information, the operating systems, the traffic by source IP, the traffic by source user. I can see application protocol information from a risk perspective, but also from a business relevance perspective. For example, Xbox might not have much business relevance to be operating within an environment. I can look at this through application protocol, client application, or web application. Security intelligence, so traffic by category, traffic by source IP, and traffic by destination IP. I can look at intrusion information, so intrusion events by impact, top attackers, top users, events based on priority, top targets, top ingress security zones, and more. And I can look at the event details as well, and the number of events associated. I can look at file types, file names, files by disposition, sending files, receiving files. You can see geolocation information, so by initiator country, by source country, by sending country, and I can do it based on sender or receiver, and URL information. So listen, this is just a small snippet of some of the things a security operator can do with Cisco Secure Firewall. Up next is where NetOps and SecOps might leverage very similar capabilities within Cisco Secure Firewall. We're going to conclude with that in the next video.